This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Guinea's junta meets with mining companies over transitional government talks. Somalia crisis deepens as president withdraws prime minister's powers to hire and fire officials. And African countries to miss a COVID-19 vaccination target. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and with the latest in business is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. Zimbabwe's agricultural commodities trading platform is gaining momentum. We'll have the latest. And South African authorities have released a master plan to develop the country's marijuana industry. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thank you for that, Rama. Where leaders of the West Africa regional bloc ECOWAS have been meeting in the Ghanaian capital Accra. They're discussing the political situation in Guinea. It's the second time they've met since President Alpha Conde was overthrown 11 days ago. The regional leaders are deliberating on the findings of a delegation that was sent to assess the political situation in the country and which met with coup leader Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. ECOWAS has been demanding the release of the detained president and the establishment of civilian-led transition. Well, the future of Guinea's mining industry is also a major concern. The industry accounts for 26% rather of the country's GDP. That's according to the World Trade Organization. Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, with several representatives of the mining industry, Doumbouya reassured investors of their safety as well as the safety of mining sites. Guinea is the world's second largest exporter of bauxite. Bauxite is a key material used in the production of aluminum.
As a Guinean businessman, I can only protect investors, whether they come from China, Turkey, the United States or France. All the economic operators who have invested legally in the country, our role and duty is to encourage them, to protect them, to work with them and to create a good business environment. I promise to be the mediator between these businessmen and the Guinean state.
We're now joined by Michael Conte, West and Southern Africa security specialist based in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Live. What changes are we likely to see in the country's mining policy?
Well, thank you for having me. You see, when it comes to Guinea and West Africa in general, especially where military coup is concerned, we have to really adopt a wait-and-see policy. We can be we shouldn't be carried away by some of the earlier gestures by Commander Mamadi Doumbouya, but I think we would expect to see some change in terms of policy shift. We know that before Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya took over, President Conde had a shift. He was moving towards Russia and China and Turkey, and I think that was not very welcome by the French, which Guinea is a former French colony, and so I can suspect that the likes of Russia and China and Turkey would want to have a bigger stake and play in the mining sector. So it's yet to be seen what would happen. That's why I'm saying let's wait and see.
Michael, what do you foresee? It's really difficult to say because, as you say right now, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to have to wait and see. But what, in your opinion, would the economic and political implications of policy changes be?
Well, it is a very complex situation. We know, as you rightly pointed out, the mining sector contributes over 26% to the GDP. And then you have this mine, the Simadu mine, which is one of the purest form of iron ore. And there are talks of a lot of potential within this mine. But I would think that the global financial capital would have a lot in terms of driving the policy issues. Unfortunately, we know that African countries do not have much say in terms of the resources, in terms of the pricing of the resources. This is sometimes decided in the West. And so the implication of who takes the lead within the political aim in Guinea and how are they positioned internationally to the powers that be might have a very impactful situation in terms of political and economic impact within the country.
Michael, speak to us about the role of the mining sector in Guinea's economy and how significant it is in the country moving forward.
It is huge, and I think it started, just to give it a context, since the time of President Sékou Touré. He actually instilled this whole issue around factories in terms of mining and a work ethics in Guinea. And the mining sector has played a very pivotal role in the economy in Guinea. And it seems like, to me, that is something that Commander Mamadi Doumbouya understands, and the leaders of the opposition, the civil society, and the entire Guinea population understands the importance of mining sector. And I think they will do all in their power to protect it, because that is, I would say, that's the breadbasket of Guinea. And what they do within that sector will go a long way in terms of development and the prosperity for Guinea and our people.
Michael, thank you so much for all that. Michael Kunte, West and Southern Africa security specialist, is based in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Well, Libya's interim Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeia is in Cairo to boost ties with Egypt and discuss his country's political roadmap. Dbeia is to also discuss the return of Egyptian workers to Libya, as well as the reconstruction of the war-torn country. While in Egypt, the Libyan leader is also set to meet with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Reporting from Cairo, he's Adel Amrouchi.
Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli welcomed Libya's interim Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeia upon his arrival at Cairo airport. Dbeia is leading a big ministerial and technical delegation for the 11th round of the Joint Higher Committee, a platform established to normalize ties interrupted by Libya's civil war.
The Joint Higher Committee is a fundamental part of the Egyptian-Libyan relations. It established the 10 rights agreements which we as Libyans and Egyptians have been seeking to revive. It includes the freedom of movement, ownership and residency. At one time, Libya hosted 3 million Egyptians and Egypt hosted many Libyans.
Dbeiba's visit comes just one day after Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi held talks with the commander of the Libyan National Army Khalifa Haftar and Speaker of the Eastern-based Parliament Aqila Saleh. Sisi continued the discussions he started with the Eastern-based leaders with the Libyan premier on Thursday. They focused on the means to peacefully evacuate foreign fighters and hold the elections on time.
Libya is facing many complications now. At a time when the country should be moving towards elections, we find people on the ground moving in the opposite direction. Haftar, Aguila and Dbeia are in Cairo. Presidency Council members are now in Qatar, Italy, and that group is touring African countries. It's clear that not all Libyan leaders are trying to put the elections back on track.
What makes Egypt play an important role in bringing Libyan points of views closer is that Egypt now stands at equal distances from all parties in Libya. It refuses foreign intervention and it cares about Libya's stability because it affects it directly. Libya is the western extension of Egypt's national security. Having Dbeia in Cairo is important to finalize the last months in the life of that government until elections are held on the 24th of December.
Egypt and Libya have signed several agreements that are expected to enhance bilateral cooperation in several fields. In recent years, Egyptian talks with the Libyans have focused on restoring peace and finding a political way out of this decade-long conflict. Recently, the two nations have been talking about what will happen after the transition ends. Currently, they're working to remove all obstacles preventing Egyptian laborers and companies from crossing border to help in reconstructing Libya. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, over 100 firefighters and officials from South Africa's Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment have returned home from Manitoba, Canada. They'd gone there on a mission to assist firefighting units douse wildfires. Angela Coppola reports.
These South African firefighting divisions were deployed to various active blazes in Manitoba, in Loon Straits in the eastern sector and the Cold Lake complex in the western sector, where multiple fires were burning.
You impressed us so much, and you have continued to do it even here this morning. We really appreciate what you did, and I know you've heard it from the government of Manitoba, but on behalf of the government of Canada, you traveled 30,000 kilometers to go to Manitoba and come back.
This is the fourth deployment to Canada for the Working on Fire firefighters.
It's been a wonderful success. It's been a success that's been acclaimed by both the political and the fire management authorities in Manitoba. And as the Minister of Conservation and Climate in Manitoba said, we've won a place in their hearts, and that if ever there were a need, they will certainly turn to us again.
The firefighters went through vigorous training before they were deployed to the Manitoba fire lines.
It was quite interesting because we were using chopper most of the time when going to fight fire. And we were in around our camp where the fire is burning. There was no delay at all. So it was quite interesting compared to South Africa.
We learned how to operate the pump operator that side because it's not the same here. Because the pump operator in Manitoba, it runs a lot of time. So here doesn't run the same way.
It's not unusual for foreign firefighters to be deployed internationally in times of crisis.
Well, I think there are some differences which might not apply. They do rely very much more on hoses and pumps up to 6 kilometers long. We don't quite rely on it as much, but the basic principles of how you organize around firefighting is still the same.
It's been a successful mission for the 109 firefighters. They've just returned from Manitoba, Canada, waiting for their next deployment. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
We turn to Somalia now, where tensions between President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed and the country's Prime Minister continue to escalate. President Mohamed has now suspended Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Robles' powers to hire and fire officials. In a statement, the presidency says that Prime Minister Robles' executive powers have been suspended due to a violation of the transitional constitution. The country entered a transitional period after President Mohamed extended his 4-year term. This set off tensions not only between the two men, but also divided Somalia. Army factions loyal to each of them have taken up rival positions in the capital, Mogadishu. For further analysis on the situation, we're joined by Isaac Mohammed, founder and executive director of the Legacy Center for Peace and Transparency, which is based in the U.S. city of Minneapolis. Thank you so much for joining us, Isaac. Isaac, what are the implications of these worsening relations of Somalia's top leaders to the country, especially with regard to election plans, the fight against militias, and also regional stability?
Well, thank you for having me on. The current political struggle was provoked by the sacking of the former NISA director after he defied the Prime Minister's directives on the investigation of the former NISA officer believed to have been killed by NISA's inside job. Undoubtedly, this political struggle can further derail the already overdue elections and create more confusion and skepticism in the system. This pointless political bickering will embolden Al-Shabaab and give them opportunity to try to make advances as the focus and resources shift from them toward this political infight.
Isaac, what do you believe could be the solution to what is happening in Somalia?
I think both the Prime Minister and the President needs to take a step back, pause, and should stop bickering and focus on the elections. More so is for the president. The president does not have the constitutional mandate nor the political clout to suspend the prime minister. Therefore, the president needs to understand he is a lame duck president, and as such must give the prime minister the space he needs to continue to work and to do the work he was tasked and mandated. Somalia's current situation is more than citing the constitution. It calls for statesmanship and consensus and compromise. That is why a political agreement was reached last year and then later amended this year, which emboldened the prime minister to have the confidence to take the decisions he's taking now. The president needs to stop this act of madness and understand the sooner he focuses on his re-election campaign and gets out of the way is better for the nation, for himself, and for the presidency itself.
Isaac, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Isaac Mohamed, founder and executive director of the Legacy Center for Peace and Transparency, which is based in the U.S. Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping is to meet with other heads of state of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization via video link on Friday. The SCO is an organization led by China and Russia with participation of some regional countries. This year marks the 20th anniversary of its founding. Officials say the SCO has become one of the major mechanisms promoting regional and global stability as well as prosperity. Iran submitted applications for full membership after receiving observer status in 2005. Afghanistan is set to dominate the agenda after a dramatic August that saw the Taliban take over power. Afghanistan's neighbors, including Iran, are closely watching events there. A key focus of the summit are plans and mechanisms for Afghanistan's reconstruction. Well, Afghanistan is also an SCO observer state and shares borders with several member states. Earlier, we spoke with Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies, on what role the SCO could play in facilitating Afghanistan's stability.
Ever since I think the announcement of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, you will find that various meetings, foreign minister meetings, and others before, of course, before the sudden change, the Taliban takeover, we already have many detailed, full-fledged sort of collaborations and elaborations on how to manage the fallouts of Afghanistan. 1 month ago, when with the sudden sort of takeover by the Taliban in Afghanistan, the question that how to ensure the smooth transfer or the soft landing of Afghanistan becomes a burning issue for the region. And I think SCO certainly will be helpful and would work together to come up, hopefully, I think, a kind of SCO sort of a solution to ensure peace and stability would be maintained. But more importantly, as all the SCO members share convergences that for Taliban to succeed in Afghanistan, it has to be to pursue an inclusive political platform or framework. B, I think it should adopt a moderate policy. And C, which is very important, it should have a clean cut with all the international terrorist groups and working together with all its neighbors. So there are a lot of expectations, and indeed, big role SCO can play to ensure Afghanistan will continue to enjoy peace and stability.
Well, let's now take a short break and return. Here's what you can expect. African countries to miss COVID-19 vaccination goal. And South Africa devises strategy to bring vaccines closer to citizens.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent. to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, more than 80% of African countries are set to miss a target set by the World Health Assembly to vaccinate at least 10% of their vulnerable population. And as CGTN's Robert Nagila reports, experts say vaccine hoarding is to blame for that.
When it comes to COVID-19 vaccines, the African continent's lagging behind in administering the jabs. The World Health Organization says about 3% of the continent's population are fully vaccinated, compared to about 52% in the United States and 57% in the European Union. And now, the global body says Africa is set to miss a crucial target to vaccinate at least 10% of its most vulnerable population by the end of September. Health experts say this was expected.
It's been anticipated that we may well miss that target, given the slow pace of vaccination, mainly arising from the scarcity of vaccine on the continent.
Professor Joachim Osser, a health specialist with Amref Health Africa, blames the scarcity on developed countries.
The problem is that we have vaccine shortage, and this vaccine shortage is artificial in the sense that the vaccines are being produced, but they are being hoarded in the north.
The other challenge the continent is facing is uptake. Despite an increase in the number of people vaccinated following increased shipments last month, 26 countries have used less than half their doses. Only 9 African countries, among them South Africa, Morocco and Tunisia, have vaccinated 10% of their population. 42 countries are struggling to meet the target. The consequences, Professor Osir says, will be felt outside Africa's borders.
As long as the disease is spreading at a high rate in countries where vaccination has not happened, there is a high risk to everyone else in the world. We will get mutations which will not be controlled by the current vaccines that we have.
But amidst the concerns, there's a silver lining, according to Dr. Eslam.
It perhaps took a crisis of this nature to focus African leadership on the need for Africa to develop its own capacity, ability to manufacture vaccine and other medicines and testing technologies.
WHO says the continent could still meet the 10% target as more vaccine deliveries from COVAX and the African Union are expected by the end of the month. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, over in South Africa, despite COVID-19 vaccines being available to all adults, uptake remains low, with just 20% of them having received a first dose. Now, the Gauteng provincial government has adopted a strategy of taking the vaccines to certain areas and arranging for people there to be vaccinated outside their own homes. CGTN's Yulisa Njamela reports.
A large number of South Africans remain reluctant to participate in the vaccination drive. Myths, disinformation and fear are some of the issues that health experts point out as reasons for vaccine hesitancy. This reluctance is hampering the government's plans to vaccinate a certain number of people. South Africa is hoping to ultimately vaccinate 70% of the population, or 39 million, to create a herd immunity against the coronavirus. In partnership with the private sector and other stakeholders, the Gauteng government has set up mobile vaccination sites to allow people to have better access.
It is part of ramping up our program of a vaccine rollout in making sure that we take vaccine to our people, because we have realized that we have opened a number of sites, but our numbers were very slow. So on 7-day weekly, we are assessing our performance, and then for those districts that are performing very low, that is where we are taking the vaccine to the people. in making sure that our people access the vaccination.
The private sector has also joined in to assist the government.
As a corporate citizen, it is absolutely our responsibility to try by all means to work with our government, particularly in collaboration with regards to vaccination. We know that currently the target for government is to reach about 40 million people by December, and we have taken it upon ourselves as SAB to try to extend our site facilities and ensure that we can vaccinate as much people as possible.
The Gauteng government has expressed concern about certain sections of the society that have extremely low turnout of people willing to vaccinate.
We have realized that people from the informal settlements are not coming for the vaccine. We don't know, maybe is it because of access to our sites or is it because other issues. So we will be going to our informal settlements, doing door-to-door, hear our people, what are the issues, why are they not taking the vaccine. And the vaccine, for me, it's safe, it's the right thing to do. And that if there are any misconceptions, we will be there to come and explain to our people.
The Gauteng government is also providing transport for the public to reach COVID-19 vaccination sites. Yolisa Njamelo for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Where nearly 7 million COVID-19 vaccine shots have so far been administered in Tunisia. However, the health ministry reports that some 66,000 jab appointments were missed on just one day this week. The Scientific Committee to Fight the Coronavirus says this figure points to a high rate of vaccine hesitancy in the country. Adnan Shiwashi reports.
The COVID-19 vaccination operation continues throughout Tunisia. Medics say vaccinating 60% to 70% of the population is necessary in the next 3 months.
We are expecting a new wave of COVID-19 in autumn and winter. The emergence of the Delta variant was disastrous for hospitals and deadly for the population here and in North Africa in general. We must be vigilant about the detection of new coronavirus variants. We insist on the importance of mass vaccination as soon as possible. It's the only solution for the moment.
Over 6.8 million COVID-19 vaccine shots have been administered so far, including 2.3 million second doses, according to the Health Ministry. However, the Scientific Committee to Fight Against the Coronavirus said it is unacceptable that a large number of people miss their first or second dose appointments.
I hesitated before getting my first jab, and I think everyone should get their first and second dose on time. It takes less than 5 minutes to complete the vaccination procedure. Vaccine hesitancy is widely spread among youths. This behavior is dangerous, while the vaccine is safe and efficient.
The Health Department revealed that 30% of senior citizens aged 75 and over were not vaccinated. Authorities have launched a sensitization campaign urging elderly people to get their COVID-19 vaccines.
I know many retired people who did not get their vaccines because they are not aware that it's vital. We cannot protect ourselves and our families without the vaccine. The so-called side effects that some people fear are rare, while the virus is real. Vaccinating all elderly people is the only way to resume a normal life instead of being isolated at home.
Experts at the National Observatory of New and Emerging Diseases have urged Tunisians to get their first and second doses of the COVID-19 vaccine in order to maximize their protection. The COVID-19 pandemic has claimed over 24,000 lives so far in Tunisia. The Ministry of Health declared that the epidemiological indicators have improved in the second week of September compared to the peak in July. The bed occupancy rate in ICUs dropped from 97 to 65%. Authorities say the number of patients under life support has decreased from 84 to 50%. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, the question of gaining immunity after receiving the COVID-19 vaccine has become a hot topic. At present, vaccines don't provide full protection from the coronavirus, but it is reported that they significantly reduce the risk of hospitalization. Well, a new study is showing that some people may have developed superhuman immunity against the coronavirus. Untitled takes a look at what this means in the global fight against COVID-19.
Scientists have identified cases of superhuman or hybrid immunity. Hybrid immunity is a term preferred by experts like Paul Biennaz. A study published by Biennaz and his colleagues identified that some people who were infected with COVID-19 and received mRNA vaccines showed very high levels of antibodies.
So what we find with this immunity that's conferred by infection and vaccination is that it's at a significantly higher level than immunity that's conferred either by infection alone or by vaccination alone. The way we have measured it is really by studying the antibodies that are circulating in these people who have been infected and vaccinated.
Not only were high levels of antibodies identified, the scientists believe those with hybrid immunity can be better protected from COVID-19 variants. Biennaz explains booster shots could possibly provide the same effect for the general population.
So that is something that we're studying at present, whether a third booster shot can, at least to some level, mimic the effect of having been infected and then vaccinated. Thus far, it seems to be partially true that a third booster can, to some degree, mimic the effect of first being infected and then being vaccinated.
The debate surrounding booster shots has been heated. Developed countries like the US have announced plans to make booster shots available. But WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom has pushed back against this, noting that low-income regions like Africa are struggling to provide vaccines to their populations. And while the study has shown promise, Biennaz warns those who have been both vaccinated and infected to remain cautious.
It's good news for those that have already had the misfortune of having been infected and gotten through it and then been vaccinated. I think we can expect those people to be quite strongly protected. They shouldn't regard themselves as being bulletproof.
So far, the study has only taken place in a lab setting. Biennaz says he and his colleagues are still learning about what this hybrid immunity means in a real-world setting. Untitled, CGTN.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more in Africa Live, including the latest in sport. But for now, let's take a look at what's happening in the world of business with Rama.
Thank you, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. Zimbabwe's agricultural commodities trading platform is gaining momentum. We'll have the latest. And South African authorities are releasing a master plan to develop the country's marijuana industry.
The East China Sea, home of dream seekers, where China's hub for reform and opening up connects with the maritime Silk Road. Whether it's exploring the busiest seaport and trade zone, or witnessing how locals strive for a better life. Join CGTN's adventure, Tides of Change Part 2. A journey enchanted by a dynamic ocean and beyond.
Let's start in West Africa. Ghana's economy for the second quarter of 2021 is estimated to have increased by nearly 4% compared to the same period last year. According to the most recent provisional data from Ghana's Statistical Service, Ghana's real GDP growth was 0.9% in the quarter. That's 0.1 percentage point higher compared to what was recorded in the first quarter of 2021. The growth rate was driven by a strong pickup in the services and agricultural sectors, according to official data. The economic output in the second quarter marks the third consecutive quarter of positive growth after contractions recorded in the second and the third quarters of 2020. During the same period last year, when COVID-19 had emerged, Ghana's economy contracted by 5.7%. Elsewhere, the interim CEO of South African Airways says that the state-owned airline will need a more modern fleet of aircraft in order to be competitive on routes outside its home continent. in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. SA is set to restart operations next week after emerging from bankruptcy proceedings about 18 months after the fleet was grounded at the start of the pandemic. Flights are set to operate from Johannesburg to Cape Town, plus a range of other African capitals, including Accra, Kinshasa, Harare, Lusaka and Maputo. SA at the moment has 8 aircraft in its fleet that's made up of 5 original first-generation Airbus A320 series narrow-bodies, an A330 wide-body and a pair of rather thirsty 4-engined A340s. Away from aviation, economies in Africa happen to make up the 3rd fastest growing market for the adoption of cryptocurrencies. That's according to a new report from the blockchain research and analytics firm Chainalysis. The report shows that the African crypto market has gone up by over 1,200% in terms of value received over the last year. The increased cryptocurrency activity in the region was fueled by retail users who are looking to both save and transfer money. Chainalysis estimates that African countries collectively have received roughly $105 billion worth of crypto between July 2020 and June 2021. But the continent is still the smallest crypto economy of all the regions that the research firm studies. On to Zimbabwe now. The country has asked Mozambique and Zambia, it's essentially neighbors in the region, to supply it with more electricity, as authorities there try to desperately fill a power generation shortfall that's led to outages that last up to 12 hours every day. Energy Minister Soda Zemu says that the government is in talks with Mozambique for the recently commissioned power plants to get an additional 180 megawatts of generation capacity. Authorities in Harare are also finalizing discussions with Zambia to get an additional 100 megawatts of generation capacity as well. Now, the current electricity cuts were because of rehabilitation work, in part at the Kariba South hydroelectric plant, constraints at the coal-fired Hwange plant and limited power imports. That at least is according to the Zimbabwe Electricity Supply Authority. A total of 1,276 megawatts of generation capacity is available at the moment, but to meet effective demand right now, the country needs 1,700 megawatts online. Now, we're still in Zimbabwe. The country's mercantile exchange, it's an agricultural commodities trading platform, is gaining momentum. That platform has automated electronic warehousing and receipting capabilities. Its founders say that they created the exchange in order to improve the economic conditions of Zimbabwe's farmers. Here's CGTN's Faraima Kutuya with the latest on this platform.
With agriculture the mainstay here, growing and trading of crops is at the heart of economic activity. But things don't always run smoothly, especially after the harvest.
At the moment, our farmers on the farm, they lose up to 25% of their crop after harvesting. And then along the way, an additional 20-25% percentage points are also lost.
The Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange is trying to address the challenges farmers face by bringing together key service providers such as transport and warehouse operators, financial institutions and commodity brokers onto one platform so produce gets from the farm to the market more efficiently. It will get farmers market access and fair prices.
Without a setup or infrastructure like this, the commodities get mixed, a single price for all commodities, no motivation really to focus on quality. But once we bring in the quality standards that ZMX bring in, then it means those who provide high quality are also paid higher. Buyers will already be queuing up on the commodity exchange and putting in their bids, and a farmer can actually be able to sell at the highest prices possible.
It will also cut out unscrupulous intermediaries.
With the current setup or the setup we are trying to move away from, farmers are at the mercy of middlemen, of buyers who pay them when they feel like paying them. But with the rules that the commodity exchange come up with, we then have standards, settlement standards.
Trade is done both online and physically. This is where all the magic happens, a trading floor in Harare's central business district, specifically set up for merchants and farmers who may not have internet access, for instance, to participate remotely, to come in, get real-time information on commodities, put in their bids or cash in their receipts. Zimbabwe has previously had a commodities exchange, But the new system includes a warehouse receipt and spot market trading platform, which is a departure from what has been seen here before. That's why there is a concerted effort underway to raise awareness and bring on board as many participants as possible. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
All right, then let's head over to South Africa. The country estimates that its cannabis sector, its marijuana sector if you prefer, is worth nearly $2 billion. Now, the use of marijuana is still not 100% legal in the country, but the Department of Land and Agriculture has released its master plan on how to develop a domestic, vibrant marijuana industry. Here's Sumitra Naidu with the details.
It's being dubbed the Green Rush. South Africa's new cannabis master plan details how the plant will diversify the economy and create thousands of new job opportunities. Currently, only a handful of growers are licensed and only for medical use.
We are one of 30 licensed facilities. Every grower in South Africa like to think they're the best. We certainly see ourselves as leaders. Currently what we do is the way we make the product available to patients in South Africa is through an organized system called a Section 21, where the doctor would prescribe medicine to a patient and the patient would apply through the doctor.
In 2019, South Africa's constitution legalized private cannabis use and cultivation, but commercial growing and selling for recreation remains illegal.
What we do have is a very large cannabis market that we obviously do know of. Unfortunately, a lot of that is part of the illicit market. However, with the model that we're trying to bring into place, it's going to need the inclusion of the black market buyers and the black market growers, because through this channel, we can now regulate and get people into job positions, creating new economic growth and positions within the country and the cannabis industry.
This master plan will be used to address the entire cannabis industry from seed to sale. It will also be used to address legalization of the cannabis industry and the regulations thereof.
The new regulatory framework will include small business development, foreign direct investment, and export opportunities for cannabis products beyond the medicinal market.
The opportunities is phenomenal, to Australia, America, all over the world, depending on if you trade in your CBD products or CBD and THC, your psychoactive products, but the opportunities are phenomenal.
The master plan also addresses education at all levels before market development.
We are all very excited about this new cannabis industry that's really taking over the Vaal, and the excitement is immense. I am 100% convinced that this is exactly what the Vaal needs now. I think at this stage we're only scratching the surface.
Government's plan is comprehensive, even detailing funding and financing mechanisms to ensure South Africa capitalizes fully on this opportunity. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
One last story for you. This one is quite literally out of this world. Crew of the Chinese spacecraft, the Shenzhou 12, have left the core module of the Tianhe space station for their return journey back to planet Earth. Earlier today, the spacecraft successfully undocked from the core module. The taikonauts in question, Nie Haisheng, Yu Boming and Tang Hongbo, completed the tasks on the core module before the separation happened. The crew lived on the space station for 91 days. They set a record for Chinese astronauts on a single mission in orbit. The China Manned Space Engineering Office says the crew will get back to planet Earth sometime tomorrow. In the meantime, China is getting ready for yet another launch as it builds its own space station bit by bit. The Tianzhou 3 cargo spacecraft and its Long March carrier rocket will be taking off in the days to come. I'll leave you there for the time being, but here's what's coming up at the top of the hour. We'll be focusing on Kenya. Lots of outcry and anger here about the rising cost of fossil fuels. Prices, in fact, at the pump have gone up to levels we've not seen in at least 10 years. Authorities in East Africa's largest economy decided apparently not to essentially tap into a fund meant to stabilize prices, and therefore retail prices went up by over 6%, even as the local currency continues to weaken. So what are the implications for Kenya's economy, and how did we end up here in the first place? We'll explore that and plenty more at the top of the hour. See you at 1800 GMT. For now, back to Hannah.
We're so looking forward to that, Rama. We'll see you then. Well, let's not take a short break and return. More in Africa Live, including... The third edition of the Squash by the Pyramids tournament gets underway in Egypt.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours?